Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon from Bangkok, Thailand, and good morning there at Vienna, Austria, Dr. Hendrik Wagenaar. And also good afternoon in the Philippines. Thank you so much for joining us in this event for today. This is primarily a book talk of Dr. Piyapong Boossabong on empathetic design, emotional engagement, inclusive spaces, and empowered deliberation. And at the same time, this will be a soft launching for our initiative, the Philippine Critical Policy Studies Initiative, co-convened by colleagues from the University of the Philippines, Visayas, Tacloban, and Cebu. And with us here today are participants coming from Australia, coming from the Philippines and Thailand, and among other countries who kindly registered and kindly offered their time to participate in this very timely and important discussion on the empathetic policy design and the emotions, the highlight on emotions in public policy. And it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the online launching and also the book talk of Dr. Piyapong. And my name is Noe John, and I'm from the Philippines. I currently serve as a PhD candidate at Chiang Mai University School of Policy and an assistant professor of political science and public policy at the University of the Philippines, Cebu. And the Critical Policy Studies Network, or particularly the initiative that we are working on, the Philippine Critical Policy Studies Initiative, is a response to the growing need for a space for scholars, practitioners, and students in the Philippines to interrogate policy, not just technical and bureaucratic tool, but also deeply engage in political, ethical, and discussions. And this initiative is a critical engagement for us in the Philippines as well. And we hope to establish this network and to establish this initiative to respond to the growing needs of the country and the region and beyond. So for today's launch, we will be having our big conversation about this empathetic policy design, the book by Dr. Piyapong, which he will be presenting today. And we are honored as well to have Dr. Hendrik Wagenaar from Austria, University of Vienna, and University of Canberra, who will be our discussants for today. Unfortunately, we also invited Dr. Anna Dernova, but due to some family emergency, she extended her apologies for not joining us for today. And we are truly honored as well to have you all here in this conversation. Now, I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Tony, for a very short discussion what this initiative is about, and also to introduce Dr. Piyapong to our participants.
Hi, I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, from Thailand, good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, or good morning, wherever you are. So I have two specific tasks for today. It's quite short. I'm just going to introduce our initiative, which is the Philippine Critical Policy Studies Initiative, and then segue towards obviously introducing our speaker. So the Philippine Critical Policy Studies Initiative is born out of a shared goal to build a community of scholars and academics who are committed in approaching public policy from what we call the road less traveled, to be published. This means going beyond technocratic fixes and narrowly instrumental views of policy, and instead foregrounding questions of power, meaning, emotion, lived experience, in how policies are made and contested. This initiative brings together voices across the Philippines, Asia, Southeast Asia, and beyond, and explore the critical and interpretive approaches that are often sidelined but urgently needed. So to mark its launch, the Philippine CPSI is hosting this book talk on empathetic policy design, emotional engagement, inclusive space, and empowered deliberation by Associate Professor Dr. Piyapong Boossabong, Network Coordinator of the Critical Policy Studies Network. So I have the pleasure of introducing my professor. So I'm given this task to introduce our speaker today, my mentor, my thesis advisor, and a prominent figure in policy studies and critical policy studies in Asia and beyond. Ajahn Piyapong, Ajahn meaning the way we refer to professors here in Thailand, is a critical academic. He is a associate professor of the School of Public Policy in Chiang Mai University, or SPP. He also serves as a coordinator of the Critical Policy Studies Network. So to give a brief background, he did his undergraduate and master's here in Thailand, Chulalongkorn University, and he did his PhD in Policy and Planning Studies in UCL in the UK. As both a practitioner and academic, Ajahn Piyapong specializes in policy analysis in the Global South, planning, governance, deliberative processes, including inclusive empathetic policy design, as well as urban, food, and agriculture. He has published extensively on policy analysis, deliberative policy analysis, and planning in journals such as the Critical Policy Studies, Journal of Asia and Public Policy, Journal of Future Studies, the International Review of Public Policy, among others. He also authored and co-authored several book chapters on these topics and have edited several book projects as well. Today, we will have the opportunity to hear him speak about his newly published book entitled Empathetic Policy Design, Emotional Engagement, Inclusive Space, and Empowered Deliberation. The book makes a compelling contribution to public policy design by introducing an inclusive dimension, one that creates space for emotions and feelings. With this alternative approach, Ajahn Piyapong offers a lens from which we can place citizens at the heart of policymaking, aiming for processes that are more inclusive, participatory, grounded in empathy. So it is an honor to welcome Associate Professor Dr. Piyapong Boossabong to share his work with us. Ajahn, the virtual floor is yours.
Okay, it's my pleasure to be the first one who share the work on behalf of the big critical and interpretive policy studies and analysis communities, which is very huge now. So I think follow me should be Professor Hendrik Wagenaar. He just launched his new books on the interpretive methods, which very important and maybe more interesting than what I gonna share today. But again, I'm very pleased to be the first one who share in this network initiative, right? You call yourself initiative. So congratulations on the effort that you guys put together, especially the friends and colleagues in the Philippines. I'm very pleased that you initiate this. I'm a bit shocking that Hendrik here with us. He actually my PhD external examiner, so it feels like I need to go back to the time that I present my work to him, and he made a very constructive criticism, but always tough. So I spent more than 6 months, I think, to respond to his comments. So I hope today it's gonna be another time that I gonna learn from his feedback, and I'm very pleased that he can join us today. So I a bit shy about my works because actually it's not really tough academic works, as I usually perceive myself as the academics. It means that I'm not really intellectual or academic scholar. So what I put in the books is actually the practical works that myself and my team, we, let's say, is part of the learning process. We just try to go beyond the fact that a lot of people feel uncomfortable when they attend the public forum, that the facilitator usually asks them to provide a very concrete evidence, I would say, or cowardly facts. So we observe, I mean, let's say it starts from the observation. I actually influenced a lot by deliberative policy analysis books of Hendrik Wagenaar. Something that I realized that when we have a very good aim to bring people in the forum, but we make the forum to be more like a kind of formal and kind of professional forum, is gonna recruit a lot of people who not really feel comfortable to share technical knowledge, or the expectation that the facilitator gonna gain a kind of very insight, very specific analysis or information that those people need to provide. So especially in the context, in the non-Western context, that people feel fear, or even not really want to join the public forum, as they not really confident that they're gonna propose a sound information or good enough thought, and that is the entry point. So our team, let's say our team, we try to thinking about how we're gonna include people into the meaningful deliberative participation. So the entry point is that we need to ensure that the expectation of the people who join the session is not technical knowledge, or the thing that they need to ensure that they come with something very concrete, factual, evidence-based. So that is the entry point. It doesn't mean that everyone can share specific knowledge, especially lay people. But if we shift the narrative from specific information that we need from them to their hope and their fear, it's make different, because everyone can, if everyone have hope, everyone have fears. So that's the first attempt. We shift the narrative, and then we realize that at the same time, I read a lot of materials. Actually, Anna also the one who inspire a lot of thoughts that I and my team bring in to this policy design initiative, which is to reframe emotional message or emotional narratives as actually a mode of knowing. So this is the way that we can be more inclusive. And it's true based on the experimentation. I mean, based on a lot of practices that we, as many of you guys know, school public policy in especially in Southeast Asia and in Asia at large, most of the tasks that we do is not really teaching and kind of academic publication, but actually we are the think tank, the government at different levels, the central government, the regional government, the local government usually perceive us as the think tank. So that's why most of the tasks that we work is actually work with the government body. So we have a lot of opportunity as the consultant or as the think tank to introduce the new methods and the new policy design process. I mean, let's say we mostly engage in the design process of public policy and planning. So that's why this book actually it just combine the different attempts that we have experienced, and we I just be the one who try to reflect on that and share with the public. So this is the beginning of everything. So we move away from the feeling that participation, meaningful participation, need to be evidence-based or based on factual information. We shift from that narrative to actually you can share your feeling, your emotional message, and those actually already harness the different ontological assumption. It contains some contextual information in your emotional expression. It contains your normative assumption. It contains your ideological positioning. And of course, inside the emotion that they express, I mean, within hope, within fear, for example, very clear example of emotional engagement, which is hope and fear. Within hope, within fear, actually, there are a lot of factual information, a lot of empirical level of data that we can gain from that. So let's say the attempt of me, myself, and my team is to shift the ontological positioning of policy analysis and design to harness different ontological backgrounds and try to move a little bit away from specific rationality. I mean, it doesn't mean that everything need to be instrumental, need to be based on specific morality or specific political correctness. We harness communicative rationality as epistemological underpin of the work that we have done. So of course it's not perfect, and that's why I wait to hear the reflection of both Hendrik and others participants today, friends from Philippines, of course. What you think about this? It's just another thing that another experience to share, or another experimentation that I have a chance to engage in, and think it should be a starting point for further discussion. So let's say we harness epistemological pluralism. We harness different ontological backgrounds, and we end up with the different methods that a lot of people are gonna feel like when you're talking about specific tools or specific methods, it's gonna be something that empiricists or positivists they propose. But we try to say that even the method themselves develop from empiricists or developed by positivists, but it doesn't matter. It's matter if you approach them with more with different ontological and epistemological assumption. You're gonna approach those methods in a different way. So that's why the method that I'm gonna propose here, if you look at them and you're gonna see, oh, some of them actually a lot of positivists use those methods. Yes, it's true, but let's say this is very important, how you approach those methods based on critical, interpretive, and deliberative mindset. that have their own epistemological and ontological background. So that's the entry point of everything. So the rest, I'm not quite sure how long that I have, but let's say I'm gonna try to share you very quick what we have done so far based on the different practices that we have chance to lead. So it's not the thing that you can imagine like the linear or the stages, but let's say all this actually can happen at the same time. I mean, you engage emotionally, you create the inclusive space, and you facilitate, empower deliberation. It's not like this need to start first and follow with this and end up with this. No, it's like you put them together. But of course, it's not a very good explanation about the whole framework. But let's say I cannot imagine other way to frame the way that we are doing, because it's very effective. It's back and forth, and it can happen all the time, parallel, in parallel. So that's why I put them in this kind of framework, not the stages or the flow in the linear process. So this is the thing that I think we can classify, let's say classify what we have done into 3 different flow that put together into this. So the first one, let's say I'm gonna share the practices across the case, starting from the issue of the agenda of air pollution, environmental protection, food and well-being. So let's start with the interactive exhibition. I think it's very important to start with this, because it's mean that you create the new environment that I don't want to say informal, but let's say people feel more like more equal. Of course, they're not equal. They still have power relation there, hierarchical structure, socio-cultural condition, of course. But what we try to do is to ensure that at least people feel more equal in this space. So what we try to do is to move away the kind of formal pattern of the room and make it like they can walk around. So we call this interactive exhibition the policy markets. So it's like you come and you can walk around and you can put anything into the map, and the map gonna be the basis for you to understand the scope of the discussion. So this is the first thing that I feel after we try to do this. A lot of people, feel more comfortable to share the material, especially let's say the lay people who not have the specific technical knowledge. Another things that I think is very good to start with is to do the for example, we call the city hope and city fear. And it's very interesting in this sense that they don't need to bring in any specific knowledge. They just what you hope, what you fear about the city, put them there. And we also create the photo talks. We call photo talks. We ask the people to use the camera that they have. It doesn't mean that it needs to be a very good camera. It can be some shot by their mobile phone, and shot the hope and hopeful spot and fearful spot in the city, and then send to us. And after that, we create the interactive art gallery, and we allow people to come, and people feel free to write something down into the image, the photos. So this is another way to incorporate to create inclusive space that people feel comfortable to engage without any specific judgments. Right or wrong, it's not about right and wrong. It's about what you feel, what you want to express your emotion and also the story that you want to share. So and even something that people can draw. I think this case is very interesting because most of the people in this site, we organize the public forum in the southern Thailand, that most of the participants cannot write. So they draw the image. So I think it's very interesting. They draw the image into that. So another thing that we can grab those image, and of course we need to interpret the meaning embedded in that expression. And also another thing that we use is the sticker of the different emojis that people can use that to put into the maps, interactive exhibition. So yeah, and write down something in the image, what they feel about this, what they hopeful about this, something like that. So that's the first thing that I think is very interesting to thinking about. Let's say it's not perfect, but I think from the reflection that I personally can make, I feel that based on that inclusive spaces, the exhibition that the people can interact, people feel, of course, first of all, they feel fun. And the second thing is that they feel that they can engage. And that's actually the first window, a very important window. If we want to talking about meaningful deliberative participation. Another thing, a lot of people not really understand why I call persona and journey map as another inclusive spaces. It's very interesting to imagine the real world that we are living right now, that some people, they're not really comfortable to join the public forum. They shy. It's part of the cultural condition as well. And if they come, they're not really active to present their story, because it's like they feel that they know nothing. They feel that they're not really the right person who can contribute to this area or something like that. So another inclusive space that we can make is to bring in the representative of those people. I usually use the term they can be the victims of specific policy impacts. They can be the most disadvantaged groups in the society, and they can be the vulnerable groups. And of course, sometimes when they come in the public setting and share that specific story, it's gonna be very embarrassing for them because they face with some sort of trauma. So another thing that we can do as the facilitator of the deliberative process is to bring in their story. And you don't need to use their own image. It can be other image. And the story not only from one person, but it should be the representative of those victims or those most disadvantaged people, or most vulnerable in that specific policy issue. So we create the persona, and with that it means it's like we also invite them to join the forum, but not in person. We bring the persona into the forum. But it's very important to point out another thing that we need to do. It doesn't mean that you just put it there, but you need to ask people who participate in the forum to focus on the life struggles of these people as well. So yeah, but some forum, the owner of the persona also come. But again, it doesn't mean that they can share their story accuracy without shy, without, but the story already prepared after the interview, in-depth interview, and then we develop the persona and we bring the persona into the room. And it's mean that the representative of those people already there. And it need to be a focus of the analysis. I mean, a part of the whole process. It doesn't mean that we're gonna recognize only the voice of the people who can come, but we also want the people who can come to recognize the voice, the life struggle of those persona. If you look at the Southeast Asian countries, I mean, in the Philippines as well, I'm quite sure a lot of people, it costs a lot for them, not only, to come to spend the whole day in public forum. It's about transportation. It's about, a lot of cost of opportunity. So one thing that we can save them from that is to do the persona. But of course, a lot of discussion based on the in here or not in here, right? In person or not in person. So maybe another thing that we can discuss. But let's say this is another thing that our team try to bring in to create inclusive spaces. And if people, the owner of the persona come as well, they're gonna feel very, it's like, my story has been recognized. I'm very happy that my life struggle gonna be the unit of the analysis to thinking about policy solution. So this is another thing that okay, and this is very important point. Persona also represent non-human being as well. We live in the Anthropocene, right? So we cannot invite other species to express their policy idea in the room, but we can bring in the persona. The sea, the mountain, the forest, for example, can be the persona that we bring in, and we ask people for their attention to carefully consider about that. And persona usually mix or relate to the journey maps. Journey map mean we tracking the life struggles of the people in their everyday life. So just give you the example for people to understand the life of the disadvantaged people or vulnerable persons, that we need to think about them when we gonna ideate the policy idea. So this is the thing that I think is very important to as the entry point of everything. But of course, it doesn't mean that you prepare that and everything gonna be include, or people gonna count them as the essential input for policy analysis and design. You still need to ensure that you build emotional engagement. So one thing that I think is good is to start from asking people in the room who participate to thinking about hope and fear of themselves first. So it's our hope and fear of the participant or participant in the room. And then after that, use the persona and the journey map and ask them again, but shift away from them, their hope and fear, to those people hope and fear. I mean, his hope, his fear, the person in the persona. So they shift the focus away from themselves to other people who actually, let's say, more vulnerable and need carefully attention, let's say, need specific measure or policy intervention to support them to ensure they're gonna have a better livelihood. So and another thing that we can do is to bring in the most disadvantaged people in the room as well, apart from the persona, and ask other people to stop thinking about what they what the vision that they have about those people. For example, in the image that I just show you guys, this person is the homeless. We invite the homeless into the public forum, and we are, most of the people in the front, they are public servant, authorities, policymaker, let's say. We ask them not to show us the vision, your vision about the society, but ask them to listen carefully what the disadvantaged people hope and fear. And after that, their role is not to thinking about what they're gonna do, but to thinking about how they're gonna build up hope to cope with fear of this person. And it doesn't mean that this policy gonna be very specific into only one person, but actually, let's say a lot of homeless out there. And even now, the number of homeless is rising. So he, the representative of those, a lot of people out there who has been left behind. So this is another thing that is very interesting, because it means that the focus shift from the vision of the policymaker to, let's say, the need or hope and fear, the feeling, the emotional expression of the person that need carefully attention. And what we ask him to address is not the specific terms, specific problem, but we just simply ask him to share hope and fear. And even he, the homeless, no any educational background, but everyone, it confirmed that everyone can share hope and fear. So and that's the way shift the narrative, also create room for more inclusion. And even young generation, carefully listen to the story, the hope, the fear of the new generation. She shy at the beginning, but after that, we encourage her to share and ask everyone to listen to her carefully. You don't need to show off this time, just listen to her. And but for the persona and the journey maps that I mentioned, they cannot come into the room, right? So another method that we can benefit from to build emotional engagement is the empathy map. The empathy map is that you ask participants to focus on specific persona and the journey map, and ask them to put their it's like, I don't want to use the term put the foot into the different shoes, but let's say try to imagine if you were them, what you gonna feel, what you hear in everyday life, what you experience, what you gonna facing, and even what you gonna feel, right? So that is the way to connect and extend from emotional expression of that person to emotional connection of the participant, of the public in public setting like this. So, and all of that is the good start for empower deliberation to generate a policy idea, which is the most important step for the policy design, of course. So what I try to say about this is that it doesn't mean that you need to ensure equal opportunity of the participants. No, for this term, the empower deliberation is that you need, as the facilitator, as the effective policy designers, you need to be more, I mean, you need to have the bias, but the bias to the voiceless, the bias to the person, the lay people, allow them to have a chance to interact as much as possible, allow them to talk, avoid the domination of, the bureaucrats, the politician, and the professor. Of course, a lot of professors still think that they know more than other participants. So what the facilitator need to do is to bias, but bias to the weak, bias to the voiceless. That's the idea of the empower deliberation. So a lot of tools that you can bring in to ensure that people can insert different policy idea based on different rationalities. And of course, this is part of the communicative rationalities. So you don't need to shy if you don't have any factual knowledge. If you don't have any specific managing knowledge, you don't know much about the bureaucratic system or the structure or the system of the city, you don't need to concern much about that. You can come and even bring in the good idea based on your emotional or based on your feeling. So that's the point. So let's say everyone have the right and the chance to get a good idea. So we need to create the environment that allow people to believe that they don't need to have specific knowledge to generate the good policy. So this is the thing. So SIG thinking it's very technical, right? But as I mentioned from the beginning, if you approach this technical tool by recognize that what kind of epistemological and ontological underpin assumption that you have, it can transform the technical tool to be more critical, interpretive, and deliberative orientation. So that's my point. So SIG thinking had used in business, but I realized that it worked very well because it's harnessed different rationalities of the people, and you can generate different policy ideas in different layers, from the very empirical layer to kind of very abstract or somehow. But what I try to bring in is the idea of future thinking, which is a lot of people raise the question why we need future thinking in this policy design framework. Let's say after you generate policy idea, there gonna be a lot of people say that, oh, a lot of idea here is impossible. It could not, it is not feasible within the existing system, especially the bureaucratic process, the financial, the scarcity, the resource that we have. We cannot do this, we cannot do that. So that's why future thinking very important to bring to be brought into the process. It's mean that you shift from impossible to it need time. Maybe it's not about impossible, but actually it just need more time to achieve this. So and future triangle is a very good tool because it can show people that actually, even you think it's impossible, but actually a lot of push factors, even a lot of weights, but there also a lot of push that's gonna pull into that future. So it's not impossible, but it just need time, need more time. So future thinking gonna reframe the way we thinking about the solution to be more just and sustainable orientation. Okay, so we just reframe the way that people in the room gonna imagine about the solution. They don't need to thinking about the quick win. Of course, some problem, especially for the weak, for the disadvantaged people, is very difficult to achieve. We need time, we need more resource, but it's possible. But we need to unpack what kind of weight that we need to deal with, and what kind of push that we need to benefit from. So that's the point. And we provide the guard we call the policy instruments, which is also very conventional policy analysis methods, but it helps the participant to make sense about different possibilities, different interventions, from public intervention, private intervention, and collaborative or co-creative intervention. So they have a lot of choice that they can put that built in to inspire them the possibility to select different policy instruments, to thinking about policy intervention that can build up hope to COVID fear of the people. So and another thing that's very interesting is to think backwards. Think backward help you to identify the pathway towards something that is not linear in a linear way. So you ask them to thinking about the preferable future or even transformative future to build up hope and COVID fear. What actually the transformative future or preferable future that they should dream for, and then not start from today, but start from that point backward. And one thing that we think that is very meaningful and powerful as well is to engage with the human backcasting. We ask people and show the year, 20 years. They said they need 20 years. It's a very bad joke. These people in the southern Thailand, we said that, based on your recommendation, maybe it's need to spend more than 20 years. They said that, we want to fight for it and make it happen by 20 years, because after 20 years, no one here gonna be alive because with the age that average age of the participants, so they aim for 20 years. And we ask the youngest participant to stand in the final point 20 years from now on and backward to present. So it reimagine the way that we are thinking about change, and it's possible to thinking about just and sustainable transformation, because you're gonna walk away from the limitation of the present. You open for possibility first by allow people to see things from the future and back to the present. So this is the thing. The last process, I mean, of course, based on general policy analysis and design, they end up with policy options or alternative, and then they calculate the feasibility. And the basic method that they usually use, of course, is the, for example, technical feasibility, and they can also introduce the new or progressive idea about impact assessment to ensure that do this, it's gonna be more positive impact than negative impact. So they bring in a lot of idea in technical perspective, right? Technocratic policy analysis and design. They provide a lot of impact assessment method. The health impact assessment, environmental impact assessment, social impact assessment, and even to thinking about cost effectiveness and other things. But let's say we shift away from that technical analysis to emotional impact assessment. Based on the solution that you propose, how you feel about that? Is it more hopeful? Is it more kind of level? Is it relevant? Is it satisfactory? This is in place. This is or is it not really hopeful, or it is still a lot of frustration? So we provide a lot of emotional shades for people to evaluate, assess the impact of their policy solution. But again, as I share from the beginning, this is the assumption. Of course, we can discuss about this. You may not believe or disagree about this, but our assumption is that emotion already grab other mode of knowings. I mean, it doesn't mean that in the emotion is totally separate from factual world. Actually, emotion already grab factual information, grab a lot of contextual evidence, grab a lot of normative assumption, and even ideological point of view of the people, the worldview of the people. So emotion can grab a lot of those criteria. So emotional impact assessment, even a lot of people doubt about this, but we think that it's not less important than technical analysis of health impact assessment, environmental impact assessment, and even now they're talking about sustainability impact assessment based on specific criteria and calculation. This also relevant and very important. Apart from that, I think we need to recognize as well that most of the process can create a lot of interesting and different impacts based on 5 years. Now it's turned to be the 6 years already that we incorporate those kind of methods to facilitate the empower deliberation for the empathetic policy design process. We end up with a lot of reprioritized public projects that pay particular attention to the disadvantaged people in the society. I give you some example. Now we have the vending machine located in the place that a lot of homeless they live there. So in the vending machine, we provide the basic pills, still water, and alcohol gel and masks for them. We have special medical service for most disadvantaged people in Chiang Mai right now. They have the specific SOS channel that they can point it out, and then it's gonna the demand of those people gonna lead to a specific channel of service. And this is the thing that a lot of people benefit from, most disadvantaged people, the vulnerable group. We transform the vacant land into the community gardens for the poor, and the homeless also benefit from that. The people who need to reduce cost of living, they benefit from it. We support seed, soil, and food waste, allocate food waste and public toilet in the place that the homeless usually stay, so they can have accessible to proper toilet and access to the food surplus, not food waste, sorry, food surplus from the supermarket. So all of this, it is not the big change, but it's prioritized public project that most previous public projects, public policy, let's say, usually benefit to, for example, the tourists or the middle class in the city, general population, let's say. But here we reprioritize public project to take care of the people, the voiceless people in the society. So, and now it's like the spiral from small point to bigger points, and beyond that, the process itself is very powerful, meaningful. It empower people, it emancipate, it enlighten people that they actually have not only the right to participate in the policy process, but also they have the capacity. They can provide the meaningful input into the policy domain. So that's the thing, and I really like the feeling that you can hug the stranger and you can feel appreciate the effort that the people come and bring into the process. So this is the thing that I and my team experienced for at least 5 years already, and I just simply put them into this book, not really intellectual, not really theoretical work, but let's say guided from practical works that our team have done. But a lot of challenges, of course, you can understand this. I mean, a lot of people still perceive this policy design framework as the new morality of the leader. I mean, the leader can use this method, but still sustain or maintain the hierarchical structure, authoritarian style of public policy. It is like just aristocratic leader who empathize the poor and do something good for them. So it can be used in that way. But what we try to encourage people to benefit from this approach or framework is that to ensure that more or less it's paved the way toward the empathetic democracy. It's not empathy of the powerful elite, but actually it's create the emotional connection that grounded in shared public responsibility. It shift from personal matter to relational challenge of the public. That's our aim. Is like the label of the medicine. If you're gonna use this, please ensure that it's not only the morality, the new morality or ethnic principle of the technocratic or authoritarian leaders, but it needs to pave the way toward democracy and go beyond feel-good politics. It's not another way to thinking about provide this and that to people, but it needs to drive the systematic change, the system change as well. That's another thing that we need to fight, push forward on that direction. And how we gonna mainstream the practices into the existing system. I mean, of course, they already recognize, but if they still have the protocol, the regulation that allow them to use only the technical analysis, for example, the cost benefits one and something similar. This gonna be just only additional practices for them. But if we mainstream it, it's gonna be the thing that they need to work on this. So this is the thing that we want to ensure. This is our next step, because we work very closely with a lot of local governments. So we're gonna start with the local level first, for them to try to incorporate this method into their, let's say, protocol, part of their blueprint in planning and policy design process. So this is all what I plan to share. I'm so sorry that I spent too much time, but I hope it's something that you guys can reflect.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ajan Piyapong, for your presentation and for sharing with us your book and your project in Chiang Mai. Yeah, you're within the time, so there's there's no worry about that. Just to give a very brief overview of what we have in store for the next few minutes, we will be having our discussant, Dr. Hendrik Wagenaar, and then we will also encourage our participants to participate in open forum. You may raise questions after the discussion portion, and then a synthesis by Attorney Clyde Gacayan. What I really appreciate about this presentation of Dr. Piyapong are three things. One is about creative inclusive spaces, which is something that is relevant to what we are working in Chiang Mai, and it's something that is also can be considered in the Philippines as well. So think about creative directions and creative spaces in doing policy analysis. The second thing is about empowered deliberation, which is an important direction towards reframing deliberative policy analysis. And the last one that really interests me the most is the way Ajahn Piyapong pointed out the challenges, particularly towards empathetic democracy, gearing towards empathetic democracy, not suggesting very messianic kind of direction in policy analysis, but rather it's a call towards rethinking a more empathetic and democratic kind of turn in policy analysis and policy design. Now, just to introduce to you our discussant, Dr. Hendrik Wagenaar is a distinguished scholar in public policy and interpretive policy analysis, and is currently a senior advisor at the International School for Government at King's College London and fellow at the Institute of Advanced Studies in Vienna, Austria, and adjunct professor as well at the Institute for Governance and Policy Analysis at the University of Canberra. And his recent publication, The Pandemic Within, Policy Making for a Better World, was co-authored by Barbara Reinstock, critically examines the structural shortcomings revealed during the pandemic. And just this year, he also co-authored a book on doing interpretive research, learning, and teaching imagination in social research, with Cohn Bartels contributing to the advancement of interpretive methodologies in social research and public policy as well. Without further ado, I'll give the floor to Dr. Hendrik Wagenaar for his discussion points.
Okay, thank you, Noe, and for this kind introduction. And let me start by thanking you, which you already did, but also by congratulating Piyapong, my good friend and colleague Piyapong, with the publication of this important book. In his usual modest style, he sort of downplayed his qualifications of writing the book, but I can assure you he's an excellent scholar, and he and his partner Popsuk Chamchong are both examples of scholarship to a whole generation of scholars in Southeast Asia. So kudos to that. Inter alia, this is supposedly a banner year for books on interpretive progressive policy analysis. I see Colette Einfeld in the audience, who with Helen Sullivan publishes a wonderful book on doing interpretive research, and then there's my own book with Koen Bartels on the same topic. So it's a good year for us interpretivists. Let me start with a little story, because when I read the book to prepare my notes, I had to think of an incident, if you may call it, that happened to me when I was teaching a class in policy analysis many years ago, probably more than about 12, 13 years ago. I was teaching a class in public policy at Ramkhamhaeng University in Bangkok. It was a master's class. I think it covered 4 weekends, so 2 days each weekend, because the students were all working. And in about lecture 3, I hit the topic of power. Until then, it went well, but the interactions were a bit stilted, formalized. The students, I had about 24 students. They were very deferential to the professor, and I wanted to get them to speak up, to come up with their own ideas, and that didn't go so well. Anyway, we reached the topic of the three phases of power, and I had the idea of not explaining it to them, but to send the students away in three groups, and each group had a task of writing and then acting a little play for the phase of power they were that I had assigned to them. That was a fantastic move, because what it did was that the students absolutely loved writing these plays and loved even more acting it. So what it brought out all the positive emotions that they had in interacting with each other and interacting with the topic. And from then on, it was a wholly different course. The students were very straightforward in engaging with me, engaging with the materials, in having fun with each other and with me. So it was a simple conclusion that I drew from it. Emotions redefine relationships very powerfully. It was literally a different course. So Piyapong wrote a book on the important topic of emotion in public policy. A very important book, and I will also try to explain that. And in particularly, and he also talked about it in his introduction, it's a book of how to use emotion as a lever to enhance the design and the implementation of public policy. But maybe even more importantly, it also promotes emotion in the sense of a promotion, as in an organization, as an authoritative source of knowledge in policy context, a source of knowledge in its own right, instead of emotion being dismissed as irrational eruptions of feeling, of someone being out of control, of losing it. And so I came to this because I asked myself the question, what genre of book is this? And I think it fits a number of books that use and promote progressive methods for improving planning and policy making. And you have to think of, for example, Judy Innes and David Boer's book on planning with complexity, where they present communicative rationality in planning in particular. With lots, you have to think of Patsy Healy's work on communicative planning, and on John Forrester's important book on conflict mediation, dealing with differences. And what these books have in common is that they combine practical examples, very detailed case studies really, with down-to-earth conceptualization. And the books have a progressive goal. They promote equality and justice and productive collaboration and sustainability. And this is also what Piyapong's book does. So he fits very nicely in this string, in this genre of policy books. He presents carefully designed and highly creative, as we have seen in his presentation, methods, but I put quotation marks around it. They're more heuristics, strategies, actually, with detailed examples of how he did it and or how his team did it and how it worked. And then in two concluding chapters, he summarizes the contribution that the book makes to policy studies and discusses some challenges and limitations and issues for further research. So it's a really, really important book. I don't want to take too much time. What I'm going to do is two things. First of all, I have to sort of focus a little bit on the, let's say, call it the nature of emotion. You cannot, it's always the elephant in the room, I think. And then I want to formulate a number of dilemmas, questions, if you want, that fit with the challenges in the final slide of Piyapong that the book raises. So first of all, what is emotion? And interestingly, it's something that we all have, that we all recognize, but it's very hard to put your finger on. And I think it's a very wise of Piyapong that he doesn't really want to go into it. He talks about the ontology of emotion. You saw it also in the slide, and the epistemology. That's all very important. But uh, there are definitions of emotion around, many of them actually, but they often lead to a dead end. I will say a little bit about that, with one exception, in my opinion, and that is Martha Nussbaum's work on emotion. And I'm really puzzled that it doesn't pop up more frequently in the literature on policy and emotions. We use it a lot in our own book, because our book, Doing Interpretive Policy Analysis, also centers around emotion and how it often blocks students' learning experiences. So we use Nussbaum's definition, and because we feel it's one of the most developed theories of the role of emotion in thinking, perceiving, and moral judgment. And she contrasts her definition to the conventional view of emotions that we all have, and that certainly we find in the policy world, of emotions as animal energies, as she calls it, impulses that have no connection with our thoughts, with our imaginings, and with our appraisals. So she takes position against this understanding of emotion as autonomous, more or less bodily phenomena that are largely outside of our control. And if instead she defines them as intelligent responses to the perception of value. And I think that's very, very important, because her view of emotions as responses also incorporate a time dimension. They develop in time. They're not just eruptions, and they come out of valued external objects over which we have only very incomplete control. So it's that hook with the outside world that is important in her definition. So what's central in Nussbaum's work is that emotions refer to aspects of the world that we value, but that we cannot have much control over. And I think that's so incredibly important in the policy world, because even at the moment, many explanations for the rise of right-wing movements are the people have no control over their lives anymore, or let alone over what governments are doing with their lives. And in doing this, Nussbaum breaks down the firewall between emotion and cognition. And I think we should use her work more. Maybe that's something we can do in future in future work. But because hers, I think, goes a long way towards a real epistemology of emotion. Now, why is this important? Because when I read the literature on emotions and public policy, we all sense that emotions are important to public policy. And if you read Piyapong's book, there's no doubt that that is an important insight. But the question is always, how are they important? In what ways are emotions important? And there I am often incredibly disappointed. Most of the statements don't go beyond platitudes, like the one that I discovered when I worked with my students. They define relations. So Piyapong is very wise in not trying to answer this question, but instead he does something much more important. The whole book focuses on harnessing emotions, as you call it. And I think that's a great term. It's not an attempt to control emotions. It's making emotions work in complex or conflictual policy situations. And then he presents us, as we saw, with a series of very creative strategies of designing interactions in policy situations in such a way that they facilitate the recognition and the expression of affect. And it does that in a very sort of structured way, a systematic way. And the result is then twofold. You bring out the inevitable emotional dimension of policy issues, and they're always there. You can ignore it, you can suppress it, but then it will pop up in a different and often more destructive way. Or you can, and it does, what the book does, is brings about more inclusive, more just policies. And so that's all very important. And that, I think, justifies my statement that the book is part of that string of important books, this genre of important books that I mentioned by Judy Innes and Patsy Healy and John Forrester. But the book also raises a number of important, I think of them as dilemmas or issues or questions. And I have 6 of them, and then I stop. And the first one is, and this is not to say that Piyapong hasn't thought of this himself, very much so. He actually discusses some of them in the book, but I think they need to be drawn out of the book. So the first dilemma is how do you find a balance between technical expertise and emotion? And I was confronted with it myself this very week. I was in the Netherlands. I was doing an interview with 2 people who were setting up a kind of participatory energy system. So it was all about energy production, sustainable energy, I should say. Huh? So sustainable energy production, storage, and transition. And what struck me is how incredibly difficult technically difficult the topic of energy production and transmission and storage and trading is. It's just, most of the interview with them explaining to me the technical details of all this. Now, you can have very strong feelings about that issue how it works out in your town or in your region, and people do. And even policymakers, national policymakers, have very strong feelings because they feel they have to, with the electrification of society, they have to expand the storage and transmission capacity for electricity, for example, which is will cost them tens and tens of billions of euros in our case. But if you don't understand the technical details, those feelings might be pretty misguided. And so that's for me an important dilemma in a way. And that feeds into the other issue or dilemma, if you want, the second one. If, like Nussbaum asserts, and as also Piyapong says, and one of his slides makes that point very, very directly, if emotions contain information, if emotions are a form of knowledge, then we might have to accept that emotions can be wrong, right? I mean, you can have to, and I will come back to that in another third dilemma. You can have just misguided emotions. It's not. We often think of emotions as sort of a final arbiter of things. Well, that's how I feel about it, and then it's the end of the discussion. But if your feelings are just misguided, there's a lot to talk about, I would say. So how do we deal with that? And how can we get across that sometimes emotions can be misguided? Particularly if the policy issue, and this is my third point or dilemma, if the policy issue is polarized. So I wrote a piece once with Sietske Altink that gets a lot of traction about morality politics, how certain policy issues, and it can be all policy issues, not just the life politics, as it's sometimes said, are a form of morality politics. And I'm not going into what it means. There's a nice article about it. It means that it has six strong features. One of them is that facts are sort of difficult in morality politics. Everybody thinks they are an expert, and so on and so on. But the most important part is that every policy issue can become morality politics. It's not just politics around prostitution or abortion or something. In Germany, economics, macroeconomic policy is morality politics. Now, one of the elements of morality politics is that people have very strong emotions about the issue at hand. If you are an opponent of abortion or a proponent of abortion, but you have very strong feelings. Yet those feelings can be based on the wrong information or even fake information. Or they can be rooted in strong value positions where I would say some values are not so nice, as in abortion, for example, or in sex work. So what is interesting in Piyapong's book is that almost all of the issues that function as an ongoing example throughout the book are issues in which the population is in the same boat. The effects of COVID. Well, we're all hit by COVID in, more or less in the same way, although some people are more affected than others. Or smog. We are all victims of smog if we live in an area or a town like Chiang Mai, where haze, as you call it, or smog is a big issue. So you say something important about these things, particularly on page 61, there's something important where you talk about inclusive spaces. But how does that work out with very polarized morality issues? And that leads to my fourth dilemma. How do you distinguish and how do you deal between the positive and the negative use of emotions, particularly in this thing like emotional impact assessment? So we have seen this with COVID, for example. I mean, I live in Austria. COVID unleashed a whole barrage of very negative right-wing use of emotions to promote right-wing populist policies. And there were also, of course, progressive feelings. My own wife, Barbara Preinzak, was on television almost every day to just make the progressive and rational, you could say, statement about that we should all try to use vaccines to contain the pandemic. But she was haunted on social media about it. So I find that very difficult. Dilemma number 5 is, when is the identification and expression of emotion a genuine change agent? And when is it merely symbolic politics, venting frustration, used as such by policy makers and policy elites? You call it, even in the book on page 72, a non-serious event. It's a risk that expressing emotion can become a non-serious event. And it touches upon the very important topic of the relation of empathetic policy design and elite decision making. So we've seen all the pictures of the workshops, but to what extent is our elite policymakers who make the decision, the authorities, to what extent are they willing to take that on board or even participate in these workshops? And maybe we can get the local decision makers to do that, but what about the national ones? How do we make authorities to take the outcomes of empathetic policy design on board? When does, or the opposite, when does venting emotions in policy situations only become psychotherapy or placating, in terms of Sherry Arnstein's participation letter? And that, I think that question becomes even more urgent when the examples are from an authoritarian state. You use examples from Singapore and, of course, Thailand in some ways an authoritarian state. And then my final comment, you present in the final chapter empathetic policy design as a subversive tool in authoritarian settings. And that comes back to my preceding comment, a kind of weapon of the weak. But I can see that it surely gives, and you have some very impressive examples like the one with the homeless people, it surely gives a voice to the marginal and the oppressed, and it brings about positive change. But to what extent can it bring about transformative, progressive transformations and enduring change in big policy issues? And so these are some of the issues that the book raised for me. But let me again emphasize, it's a hugely important book. I do really congratulate you with pulling it off. I think it should find a wide readership, and particularly it should be used by policymakers the world over. So my compliments and my respect for writing this book, Piyapong.
Thank you so much, Hank, for the discussion points and for providing us those 6 dilemmas that Piyapong might want to address some of those, if not all.
You mean right now?
Yeah.
Oh, just want to express my gratitude. I mean, a lot of emotions, especially positive emotion, emerge during hear your reflections. So it's mean a lot to me and my academic journeys as the scholar, which try to walk in this direction, which actually inspire very much from your thoughts. So I just think all of the reflection is the very important uh, kind of jigsaws that I need to take them, harness them, and thinking about further not only studies but practices. Actually, Hand offer a lot of important necessary research questions for us to to work on it. I mean, for the next decades, especially the rise of the right wings populists everywhere, and they also use the emotions as the entry point for create a lot of hatreds and fears and a lot of things. So very wonderful time that I have, and thank again, John, for organize this and can bring Hint to the platform. I still a bit surprised and shocked that he can come, but I'm very appreciate your reflections. No
Thank you.
response, just
Sorry.
appreciation. ครับ
Thank you so much, Dr. Hendrik, for those comments and the dilemmas that you have
One
highlighted.
more thing, just want to give this opportunity to advertise the ICPP 7 in Thailand. If you guys plan to come, because Hendrik also gonna come, and yeah, he gonna be here a little bit earlier for few days before the conference and few days after the conference. So if you guys can join the conference, we can have wonderful time together, maybe for the
Yes.
coffee or dinner. ครับ
I look forward to that.
Yeah, and we can discuss in detail about the specific plan during you are here.
Yeah. No, I would really like to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I also find the comments of Hendrik very important points for critical scholars, other critical scholars, to build on the work of Hendrik for sure and Piyapong, and further the exploration on issues and policy issues within the field. I'd like to open the floor for questions from our participants. Perhaps there are some questions, or even the members of the team.
John, may I ask you a brief question? What is your scheduled end time for the meeting?
Yeah, that would be 5 p.m. in Thailand. So
Okay, that's
roughly around
11.
15
So
to
11 here then, right? 12.
12.
Yeah, I might have to dash off a little earlier because I have a lunch appointment. So,
That's right.
but 5 to 12 or so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So if there's no questions for Piyapong, or maybe you can write the questions and then we can send it to Piyapong. Anyone from the participants? Or I'd like to call on my colleague, Clyde Gacayan, for his synthesis and some questions to raise if you have. Clyde was my undergraduate professor.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hello, Noe. Thank you for the kind introduction. Good afternoon, Dr. Piyapong, Professor Hendrik. Thank you so much for the response. I was given the task to provide the synthesis for the book talk for this afternoon. So it is with genuine excitement, actually, from the critical policy studies initiative in the Philippines that we host the book talk of our esteemed colleague, Dr. Piyapong Boossabong, as eloquently highlighted by Professor Hendrik Wagenaar, this book is nothing short of transformative. In fact, Professor Piyapong reimagines policymaking process by foregrounding emotional engagement and inclusive dialogue, offering to us, students and teachers of public policy, a profound shift in how public policy might be designed and enacted in real life. As we wrap up this book launch hosted by the Philippine Critical Policy Initiative Network, it invites us to ask how might this paradigm shifting framework echo beyond the Thai cases that were excellently presented by Professor Piyapong? How might it in fact speak to our own policy challenges in our backyard, such as the Philippines where we come from, and the aspirations of teachers and practitioners of public policy? I think as a reactor and also the one who's assigned to provide the synthesis, at the heart of the book, the thesis of Professor Piyapong is very compelling, that it challenges the dominant technocratic model of policymaking, one which is actually dominant here in the Philippines. Our esteemed colleague, Dr. Piyapong, advocates for an approach which is rooted in fact, the lived experiences and emotional realities of the people whom he've encountered and his team rather, when he was preparing for this book. Across the 7 thoughtfully crafted chapters, I'd like to thank Noe John, for giving me an advance copy for my own reading as well in preparation of the synthesis. I think that Professor Piyapong constructed very well a holistic framework that argues a very simple idea. When we integrate emotions into policy, it's actually not a liability, but rather it's a powerful asset not only for scholars, but as well as for practitioners. However, we cannot help but wonder, just like Professor Hendrik, some questions or some dilemmas that he said. I'd just like to emphasize, for instance, can emotions be misleading even if they contain information? How do emotions interact with morally charged politics? How are emotions recognized in everyday or in non-serious events, quote unquote? And what role does empathy play in addressing complex, high-stake policy issues? In the Philippines, we can't think, but is it a 180-degree turn needed or a requirement from how things have long been done? So my apologies, but much of my reflection do come in from the Philippine settings. In the Philippines, where policy decisions are frequently shaped by elite interest and technocratic procedures, Dr. Piyapong's work offers a refreshing and actually a necessary alternative. Our policy landscape here in the Philippines is often criticized more as a top-down nature and for the unintended consequences that arise because of insufficient deliberation and public engagement. Here, I suppose, and we would like to congratulate in advance Dr. Piyapong, the Empathetic Policy Design book enters the conversation as a provocative counterpoint. Allow me just to give some of issues that I also have realized while listening to everyone and while preparing for this book talk. The first issue, perhaps worth unpacking for me, is cultural context and transferability. While Dr. Piyapong's insights are rooted in the Thai experience, applying this perhaps to the Philippines or in any other setting requires a careful contextualization. I suppose that whenever we draw inspiration from the book, we have to be very careful about civic engagement norms and political cultures because they do differ widely. Thus, any attempt to transplant perhaps this framework must be sensitive to local realities. For our end, especially with my colleagues Noe Sacramento and Antonio Salazar in the Critical Policy Studies Initiative, we are keen to observe over the coming years how this emotionally grounded framework might align or clash with the ongoing decentralization efforts and participatory mechanisms in the Philippines, like bottom-up budgeting. Second, there are actually scalability and institutionalization challenges. Rolling out empathetic policy design personally on a broad scale is, I think, no small task. It calls for deep institutional shifts, significant capacity building with our partners, and reallocation of resources, especially for developing countries. In contexts like in the Philippines, characterized by bureaucratic inertia and entrenched hierarchies in terms of implementing policy, change of this magnitude may encounter resistance. Thankfully, Dr. Piyapong anticipates this resistance and wisely proposes in his book a gradual, phased approach, starting with pilot initiatives and capacity development programs, something which I personally like. A third and arguably last and a delicate concern would be the risk of superficial adoption by political elites. Operationalizing empathy in policy is inherently complex, and while Dr. Piyapong introduces tools such as empathy maps in his first part of his talk this afternoon, and emotional impact assessments, which I'm really interested, their practical reliability and methodological robustness still need testing in diverse policy environments. But even more critical, perhaps, is guarding against what Dr. Piyapong also terms as feel-good politics, a scenario where our policy elites adopt the language of empathy without embracing its true substance, using it merely as a branding exercise rather than a genuine commitment to participatory governance. This is especially where the Philippine context becomes relevant because our political party systems here are weak and often policymaking is co-opted by professional politicians. Here in the Philippine Critical Policy Studies Initiative, we see this as an invitation to research further how transparency and accountability can be safeguarded in emotionally grounded policy processes so that the transformative potential of Dr. Piyapong's book and model is actually not diluted. All things considered, empathetic policy design, I suppose, is a landmark contribution, as often repeated, that urges us to rethink the very foundations of how we see, teach, and do public policy. Its relevance to the Philippines is undeniable, but its adoption demands not just procedural tweaks. It actually calls for a cultural reorientation in how our institutions do value emotional intelligence, public participations, and qualitative insight. Beyond this, Dr. Piyapong's approach may serve as a valuable counterforce to the rise of populist tactics that weaponize emotions as well, without delivering meaningful outcomes. As a teacher both of law and policy, I see tremendous value in introducing this book to our students here in the Philippines, not just as a reading material perhaps, but as a mindset. It helps us to embrace the truth that, as Dr. Piyapong convincingly argues as well, policies grounded in empathy are more likely to yield outcomes that are both just and resonant with people that they intend to serve. In that spirit, we thank you very much, Dr. Piyapong Boossabong, and celebrate you for offering not just a book, but a blueprint perhaps for a more humane-centered, inclusive, and emotionally intelligent policymaking process and design. Thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Clyde, for your synthesis and for the important points you raised. Let me just grab this opportunity to thank Hendrik for joining us and Dr. Piyapong for your presentation, as well as to the participants who kindly gave their time as well to participate and to enlist and register for this event. And big thanks to the team behind this organizing all of this, our young faculty, young colleagues from the Philippines, from UP Visayas, UP Cebu, and UP Tacloban, 3 campuses in the Philippines, in the Visayas, beyond the center of the Philippines, where we try to create this kind of community of critical policy scholars and initiative to decenter the discourse in public policy. I would like to invite everyone for a photo opportunity. Perhaps let's open your camera. Okay, and thank you so much, everyone from Thailand as well. We're here to join Pikita, Ma'am Lady Lin, Junald, Giles, Rangsan, and Tin, Claire, and Lucky, and Ryan, and AG, and Jao, as well as Jeline. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Dagang salamat. Madamo gid nga salamat. Maraming salamat. And in Waray, I don't know how to say it. Sorry.
Madamo nga salamat.
Okay. Thank you so much. And have a good day. And see you in Chiang Mai. Thank
you.